Hi, everybody. Thank you for being patient with us as we got all the kinks worked out to get started. I'm going to hand it off to our Executive Director, David Morrison, to get the program kicked off and introduce our speakers.
Thank you, Ashley, and good evening and welcome everybody to our fourth Monday program. Historic Harrisburg this year is celebrating our 49th anniversary, and we have been doing these fourth Monday programs almost without interruption for all of those 49 years. And as we approach our 50th anniversary, we've got a lot of exciting things coming up. But these programs have been the constant, these education programs. Tonight's is no exception. You're going to hear more about that from our education chair, Dorothy King, in just a moment. I want to mention that a couple of special activities coming up later this spring. On Sunday, May 22nd, Sunday afternoon from 4 to 6, we'll be having our annual preservation celebration and toast. It'll be a toast to Harrisburg's West Shore. And we're honoring a number of organizations, including the West Shore Historical Society, whose wonderful executive director is a panelist tonight, Janice Links, and some other great organizations on the West Shore. That will be aboard the Pride of the Susquehanna Riverboat. Invitations will be coming out very shortly for that. And that's not only a fun event, but it really is when we celebrate the great things that are happening in historic preservation. The month of June is River Month, and for a lot of reasons, particularly in terms of enjoying rivers for their recreational value and caring for rivers in terms of their environmental value, but also their historical significance, particularly here in Harrisburg, because 50 years ago this June was the amazing and devastating flood of the Hurricane Agnes flood of June 1972. Which inundated a lot of Harrisburg, actually caused buildings to collapse and be washed away in some cases. Others were so damaged they were destroyed, and there was pushback where people said, you know, we don't want our neighborhoods to be just bulldozed. We want to restore our houses and stay where we are on our historic streets in Shipoke and Midtown and so forth. That was really what gave birth to the historic preservation movement 50 years ago this year. And as a result, Historic Harrisburg Association was founded about 6 months later, February, I guess it was, of 1973. They officially organized Historic Harrisburg Association. So we're observing this 50th anniversary on Saturday, June 11th. There'll be a ceremony down in Shipoke commemorating the events of 50 years ago. The very next day, Sunday, June 12th, will be our Secret Gardens of Historic Harrisburg tour, and several of the gardens in Shipoke will be featured on that tour, as well as in Midtown, Bellevue Park, and other parts of Harrisburg. On Friday, June 17th, for Third in the Burg, we'll have an exhibit about the flood and its aftermath. And the aftermath is really even more important than the flood, because the things that have been accomplished in the 50 years since the flood are really what we're very proud of and what Historic Harrisburg has been so involved in for the last 5 decades. And then on Monday, June 27th, Jeb Stewart will be giving a program that'll be part of this fourth Monday series, and that will be on Agnes at 50. Agnes, a celebration of resolve. Again, all of the accomplishments that came in the aftermath of that devastating flood. Saturday, June 25th, we have a very special event, and it's going to be the Historic Harrisburg Old House Fair. That'll be Saturday morning on the green, diagonally across the street from us here beside the Broad Street Market. And we will have several historic preservation specialists, craftsmen, and people in the industry who will be exhibiting and explaining what they do in preservation. So there'll be more of that coming as the spring unfolds, but we're very excited about that event. It's sponsored by the Auchincloss Family Fund. They have been sponsoring our preservation education programs for a number of years now, and this is the most ambitious one to date. So we're very excited. With that, Dr. Dorothy King, our education chair, I'm going to turn this over to you and your panel for the rest of the evening. And I'm going to actually go back to the community room where we have a number of in-person guests who are going to be watching this program. So even though you don't see me on Zoom, you're going to know that I'm back there. So thank you very much, ladies. Carry on.
All right. Thank you, David. And happy Women's History Month to all of you. I'm so excited to welcome our people who are actually at our site and people who are watching us virtually. So hello to you all and welcome to you all and happy Women's History Month to you all. Today we have two wonderful speakers. I'm very excited about this program, which is entitled The Bridges She Built. Women's History Month, we decided we wanted to focus on the accomplishments of women. And this is a topic that we had not yet touched upon. So we thought it would be interesting to look at women as bridge builders, bridge architects, bridge designers. Our first speaker is Veronica Martin, who is originally from Michigan. She holds a Bachelor's of Arts degree in Public History from Western Michigan University. She completed 2 summer internships at PennDOT before attending graduate school at the University of Maryland, from where she graduated with a master's in historic preservation. In conjunction with her master's program, Ms. Martin completed internships with the Advisory Council on Historic Preservation and the National Park Service. In May of 2021, she returned to PennDOT as the Historic Bridge Program Manager. She focuses on several initiatives, including historic bridge marketing and historic bridge management. Our second presenter is Janice Links. She's the founder of the Friends of Shepherd Bridge she founded the Friends of Shepherd Bridge in fall 2019. She became associated with the West Shore Historical Society, for which she is now the executive director. She's a graduate of C.W. Post College in Long Island University, for which she received an MA in music. She also holds a master's in elementary education from Adelphi University. It's no surprise that she worked as an elementary school music teacher and as a musician in New York City. She has received several awards as a teacher, including being recognized for bringing music to the community. That honor was given to her by the NAACP, or the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. She's a longtime advocate for social and environmental causes, and this passion led her to be a preservationist and use her efforts to save the Shepherd Road Bridge. I'm going to now invite Veronica Martin to begin her presentation.
Okay, let me first share my screen. And there we go. And make this a PowerPoint. Okay. So yes, as Dorothy said, I now work at PennDOT as the Historic Bridge Program Manager. I started in May of last year, so I haven't been here very long, but I've gotten to do a lot. And today I'm going to talk about women in bridge building. And we're going to start with Sarah Gupley. She is the first woman to patent a bridge. Born in Birmingham, England in 1770, Sarah Gupley married an industrialist named Samuel in 1795. Her son Thomas Gupley worked with Isambard Kingdom Brunel, an English civil engineer considered to be one of the most prolific figures in engineering history. In 1811, Sarah patented a new mode of constructing and erecting bridge and railroads without arches or sterling, whereabout the danger of being washed away from floods is avoided. Her patent, which is pictured in the bottom right corner of this slide, does not have any drawings or detailed information about how to build the bridge she describes. It's clear from the description that she envisioned a pair of chains over which timber planks would be laid to form the deck. What she's really describing is a suspension bridge using chains instead of rope. While suspension bridges had been used throughout the world for centuries, Major suspension bridges weren't built until the 1800s. An early example is the Menai Bridge, built by Thomas Telford, a Scottish civil engineer, in 1826. 13 years after that bridge was built in 1839, and after Thomas died, a newspaper referenced a letter written by Sarah in 1811. According to the letter, the Menai Bridge was completed using her patent design free of charge. However, there's been some historical debate on whether this claim is true or not. Sarah's also been credited with being the true designer behind Brunel's Clifton Suspension Bridge, because her son Thomas Gupley was close to Brunel, and Sarah highly supported the building of the suspension bridge. But again, that claim has been there's been a lot of debate back and forth on whether or not she should get so much credit or being credited at all. Nevertheless, Sarah Gupley remains as the first woman to patent a bridge officially and is a notable female inventor during a time when women weren't often allowed to even have patents in their own name. She filed a dozen different patents throughout her lifetime, including a method of keeping ships free from barnacles. She got a government contract for her patent that was worth 40,000 pounds at the time, which would now be 4.5 million in today's money. Next up is Emily Warbling and the Brooklyn Bridge. Born to an upper middle class family in Cold Spring, New York, Emily Warren Roebling became an example of a pioneer Victorian woman. Emily married Washington A. Roebling, son of famous bridge designer John A. Roebling, in 1865. In 1869, just before construction on the Brooklyn Bridge started, John Roebling actually passed away, and his son Washington took over the project. The Brooklyn Bridge was the longest suspension bridge in the world when it was built, and the first to be built with steel cables. It would take 14 years to complete the bridge. 3 years into the project, in 1872, Washington suffered from severe attacks of decompression sickness, which led to him being too sick to leave his home. Emily served as his liaison with the engineering team for the rest of the project, roughly 11 years. Over time, Emily displayed proficiency in issues relating to construction, materials, and cable fabrication. Some observed that Emily had fully assumed the title and duties of chief engineer. She served as a spokeswoman and advocate for her husband, assuring officials that he was capable of managing the project when there were talks of removing him from his position. Just before the Brooklyn Bridge opened in 1883, Emily rode the first carriage across the Brooklyn side while carrying a rooster, which was a symbol of victory. Emily never held an actual official title, and she was often overlooked in the official records completely. However, the people of Brooklyn have never forgotten her contributions, and her work has since been properly acknowledged in scholarly record and the public memory. For example, a nearby street has been renamed after Emily, and a series of children's books have been written highlighting her contribution. And you can see some examples in the bottom corner. Both of those are from 2018, when largely the story of Emily started to come to light, and there was a lot of publicity and a lot of people trying to rewrite her into the narrative a lot more. She never did not have an engineering degree, nor officially held the title of engineer, but she's a great example of a female engineer during a time when women had limited opportunities. Okay, next up is Nora Staten Barney, one of the first women civil engineers in America. Since there are a variety of different engineering disciplines, I want to take a moment to define civil engineering, because there's quite a lot. There's mechanical and electric. But civil engineering is concerned with the design, construction, and maintenance of roads, bridges, dams, and similar structures within the built environment. And it's often considered to be the oldest engineering discipline. Nora Staten Barney, born in England in 1883, was the granddaughter of Elizabeth Cady Stanton, leader of the women's rights movement in the United States. Very good for Women's History Month. Nora's family moved to New York when she was a child, and she attended Cornell University. In 1905, Nora became the first woman to obtain a civil engineering degree from Cornell, and became the first woman to be admitted as a member of the American Society of Civil Engineers, though her membership was limited to junior status, so she wasn't considered to be a full member. She went on to work for the American Bridge Company, one of the most prolific bridge companies in America in the 1900s. The New York City Board of Water Supply, the Radley Steel Construction Company, and the New York Public Service Commission. In 1908, Nora married Lee D. Forrest, the inventor of the radio vacuum tube. She worked for her husband's company for a year until they separated in 1909. According to reports, DeForest wanted Nora to quit her job and become a housewife, while Nora wanted to continue her career. Despite the fact that she was pregnant at the time of their separation, and during a time when women were still fighting for their equal rights, Nora divorced her husband in 1911. In 1916, Nora reached the age restriction for junior members in the American Society of Civil Engineers, but the organization refused to advance her membership to associate status. Nora sued the organization for full membership, but was unsuccessful. And a woman would not become a full member of the American Society of Civil Engineers until 1926. Nora Staten Barney was given fellow status at the organization in 2015, but that was many years after her death in 1971. In 2017, the New York City Department of Environmental Protection named their tunnel boring machine Nora to recognize Nora's contributions to the city's water supply system, further highlighting Nora's legacy. And she is considered to be an inspiration for women for years, thanks to her hard work and passion for engineering. So we're going to jump back across the pond to England once again to look at the Waterloo Bridge, also referred to as the Ladies' Bridge, and for a really good reason. Now regarded as one of London's finest bridges, the original Waterloo Bridge was built between 1811 and 1817. But by the time in 1823, the bridge had structural problems and temporary framework was actually added to help support it. By the 1930s, the London County Council decided to demolish the bridge and replace it with a new structure designed by Sir Giles Gerbert Scott. However, when war broke out in 1939, many of the men working on the bridge were called away to fight, and the empty positions were filled by women. It's estimated that 350 women worked on the Waterloo Bridge. However, there is no written record about their work. The building contractor, Peter Ling and Company, liquidized its assets in the 1980s, and the firm's employment records vanished. The bridge was referred to as the Ladies' Bridge by people throughout London for decades, but there was simply no evidence of women's involvement. In 2005, Professor Christine Wall, a historian, alongside filmmakers Karen Livesey and Joe Weiser, created a documentary called The Ladies' Bridge, which explored the stories of women working on Waterloo and recorded firsthand experiences of women wartime workers. Despite the oral history told by the women, people still didn't consider it enough evidence because there was nothing written or pictorial evidence proving that they actually were responsible for building the Waterloo Bridge. But that same year, in 2005, Professor Wall again returned to the archives at the National Science and Media Museum, hoping that maybe to find evidence. And in a shocking turn of events, as you can see on this slide, she did discover evidence. She discovered photographs taken for the Daily Herald newspaper showing women welders working on the bridge. She also found earlier photographs of women dismantling the previous bridge. The bottom two photos on this slide, taken a year before the bridge opened in 1945, show a female welder, ironically named Dorothy. But besides her name, there is no other evidence on who she is. That's all we know about her. History relies heavily on the written record, which has unfortunately allowed women and minorities to be excluded from the narrative completely. But in this case, with the Ladies' Bridge, women were able to reclaim their part in the historical record thanks to Professor Wall, and now the legend that the women working on the bridge can be seen as fact and supported. Lastly, but certainly not least, I would like to highlight a second female civil engineer. Born in Northford, Virginia in 1913, Hattie Scott Peterson was the first woman to earn a civil engineering degree from Howard University in 1946. She was also believed to be the first African-American woman to gain a civil engineering degree in the United States. Hattie moved to Sacramento, California a year later in 1947 to work for the US Geological Survey. She was featured in the Who's Who in Colored America in 1950. This illustrated publication, which started in 1927, listed notable people of African descent in the United States. In 1954, Hattie became the first woman engineer at the local U.S. Army Corps of Engineers district office. The Army Corps of Engineers has 3 primary mission areas: the Engineer Regiment, military construction, and civil works. Hattie worked in the hydrology section of Sacramento, so she was involved in forecasting floods, designing navigation projects, and researching flood control issues. And it's important to add that it was 1954. She made great strides in her career, but it was during quite a period of racial unrest in the United States. It wasn't until 10 years later that the Civil Rights Act of 1964 would be passed, outlawing discrimination on race and color. And Hattie recognized her unique status as a pioneering woman in a traditionally male profession and became an advocate for women's interest in engineering careers. Upon her death in 1993, Hattie and her husband left an endowment fund for Howard University. And as of 2017, the university continues to receive funds from that endowment. The Sacramento division of the Sacramento district of the Army Corps of Engineers also created the Hattie Peterson Inspirational Award to recognize individuals whose actions best exemplify the highest quality of personal and professional perseverance through social challenges. Last, looking at the future, women in the field of engineering have come a long way since the 1900s. In 1970, women accounted for only 3% of engineers, but just last year in 2021, this percentage has increased to roughly 15%. Women have seen an increase in employment across most STEM occupations, making up 27% of STEM workers, though you can see from the graph that there's been a downshift in female computer workers, while there's been a huge upshift in female social scientists. Several reasons have been suggested for the lack of women in STEM, especially engineering, including a lack of role models and misconceptions about what it's like to be an engineer. While female engineering students perform just as well as their male counterparts, they're still more likely to switch to a different major. New programs within the last decade aimed at women, especially at young girls, seek to help bridge the gap and provide additional opportunities for women interested in STEM, especially at the college level. There's a lot more organizations in society to prompt women to remain in engineering fields. Throughout this presentation, women from various backgrounds have played a major role in our built environment. Some of these women were trained in the field, while others stepped up to serve when their communities needed them. In a very similar way, Janice Links, the founder of Friends of Sheepford Bridge, is doing the same. So I'm going to throw it to Janice to hear about her work with the Sheepford Bridge.
Okay, hello. I will attempt to share my screen. Thank you, Veronica. I learned a lot. And here we have the slideshow. So before I actually begin the presentation, I would like to say that I'm going to get rid of myself here. There we go. I am not a bridge expert. I don't have a history in preservation. I'm rather someone who has learned a lot about the Sheepford Road Bridge, particularly by doing research necessary to make a case for saving the bridge. I am a retired elementary school music teacher. Like I said, no background in preservation until this bridge. But one day back in July of 2019, I got a bee in my bonnet and I decided to find out what was going on with the Sheepford Road Bridge. So there we go, sorry. The Sheepford Road Bridge crosses the Yellow Breeches Creek. It connects Fairview and Lower Allen Township and York and Cumberland counties. York and Cumberland counties are the owners of this bridge. They jointly own 9 bridges, and York has the lead on this one. So the bridge was the subject of a closure and removal study, and it was closed in January 2020 for traffic after failing inspection. The bridge is a single span, 14-foot-long pin-connected Pratt-through truss bridge, which is a mouthful, built in 1887. It's supported on stone abutments that have been repaired and coated over with concrete. So much of the original stone, I believe, is still underneath that concrete. The top chords and verticals are phoenix column sections, and the floor beams, the stringers, and open steel grid deck were replaced around 1975, and further repairs were done in 2017. The bridge has portal bracing with decorative brackets and builder's plaque. And this is the York side of the bridge, and the plaque credits the York commissioners at the time. And you can see it is built by Dean and Westbrook. On the Cumberland County side of the bridge, the plaque credits the Cumberland County commissioners. And prior to this bridge, there was a wooden bridge erected in 1877. It's thought to have been destroyed by arson. Now, I have found out some information that possibly a little downstream from this bridge, there was a woolen mill. And so possibly these bridges were built, or at least the wooden one first, to support that business. The bridge is historically significant due to its type and design using the patented Phoenix columns. So it was fabricated by the Phoenix Bridge Company, located in Phoenixville, Pennsylvania, and erected by their agents, Dean and Westbrook. The Phoenix Bridge Company was one of the nation's most important developers of metal truss bridge technology in the last half of the 19th century. Metal truss bridges were prefabricated by the Phoenix Bridge Company, and Dean and Westbrook erected them on the site. So these bridges today can be taken apart and put back together again like a giant erector set. The partnership resulted in the construction of about 280 bridges from Maine to North Carolina. The Phoenix column, patented in 1861, was one of the first successful attempts to substitute built-up wrought iron sections for cast iron, an important advance in metal truss design. So the column is a cylinder made out of wrought iron, a wrought iron tube made up of at least 4 wrought iron channels that are riveted together. And the channels proved to be quite strong and less costly than cast iron. Cast iron was also more susceptible to undetectable cracks and sudden failure that could and did cause disastrous bridge collapses. Truss bridges with Phoenix column members were used widely by railroads through the mid-1880s and for highway applications through the mid-1890s. It's mostly the later highway examples, such as the Sheepford Road Bridge, that have survived in small numbers in Pennsylvania. We call it its sister bridge is a little bit downstream, the Green Lane Farms Bridge or Edders Bridge, same type of bridge built 2 years later in 1889. Historicbridges.org rates the Sheepford Road Bridge 9 out of 10 in historical and technological significance. The PennDOT Preservation Assessment Report done in 2017 lists the preservation priority as exceptional. It is eligible for the National Register under Criterion C for technological significance and has been pre-approved twice by SHPO in 2007 and in 2018. So where are we today and how did we get there? While I continue, I'm going to be saying the word we a lot. So I want you to know that I'm just one of the friends of the Sheepford Road Bridge. There are far too many of us for me to mention everyone's name in this presentation, but I want to acknowledge that though I was the instigator, I never would have been able to continue if so many others hadn't joined me. And you'll find that the story of the Sheepford Road Bridge leading up to now has a few twists and turns in it. So I found out in 2019 that the bridge was in danger and began to seek information. Didn't know even where to begin. So I had a friend who's a lawyer and told me I should file right to know papers, which I did. By the time as the closure and removal study was presented to Lower Allen Township, I had considerable information to question it. I went online and I looked up the addresses of the first 50 houses closest to the bridge, and I snail mailed a flyer alerting my neighbors to the meeting. And many showed up and voiced their concerns and opinions. At that meeting, I met Joan Lenker, later chased her down in her driveway, and the two of us worked together until Joan moved on to other projects in October 2020. So the first thing we did was we Googled how to start a grassroots organization. We had no idea what to do. And then we followed what it said to do. One of those things was we started a website and then a Facebook page. We had lawn signs made up and began distributing them, knocking on doors, handing out information, collecting emails of those who were interested. In January of 2020, we put out a video, which proved to be rather controversial, but got the attention of many involved. The videographer, Bill Kiesling, was focused not just on the bridge and its issues, but also on how development can affect our historical properties. So I encourage you to watch this video. Frank Crumbine actually is in it. Soon after, we started a petition which garnered almost 1,200 signatures. So this was door to door. This wasn't a computer generated petition, but was a bunch of people knocking on people's doors, telling them about our bridge. And in this petition, we asked that the bridge be restored for vehicular traffic, which is something that we've had to compromise on, because as it stands now, the bridge, should it be funded, will be restored as a pedestrian bridge. We started a letter writing campaign providing contact information for county commissioners and our local representatives. We began attending county and township meetings to state our case and gathering other people and forming the Friends of Sheepford Road Bridge. We contacted preservation and historical societies, Cumberland County Historical Society, the West Shore Historical Society, Preservation PA, Historic Harrisburg, the Historic Bridge Foundation, to name a few. And at the first meeting that the West Shore Historical Society joined us, they told me that there were two things I was going to need to do. And the first was that we were going to need the support of the townships. And of course, our response was, well, how are we going to do that? Well, within a few weeks, we were able to get letters of support from them. And the second thing they told me that we would have to do is get some media attention. So once again, the thought is, well, how do you do that? So as we continued, we filed the application to place the bridge on the Cumberland County Register of Historic Places. And Cumberland County Historical Society awarded us a History Pops grant. Most importantly, we began to hold events that attracted much media attention. So this was our first event, Have a Heart, a Save Our Bridge event, and it was for the purpose to publicize our cause, namely to get into Preservation PA's February newsletter. We didn't know what to expect. First, we thought no one would come, and then we thought too many people would come. But as it worked out, it was a pretty nice gathering. And lo and behold, ABC 27 showed up, and boy, did the tone of the day take a giant upbeat there. And this is one similar to a picture that was published in Preservation PA's newsletter. And Priscilla Ligori on ABC 27. 3 days later, the bridge was closed after failing inspection. A sad day for sure. And that was on Fox 43. Next, one thing we found out as the bridge was closed was that people were saying that was the way they got into New Cumberland. That was our route. So we approached New Cumberland, and 14 of the businesses in downtown New Cumberland signed on to our event, Save Our Bridge, Save a Business. And that took place on a very, very chilly March day in 2020. Right before that, the West Shore Historical Society agreed to handle our funding for us, which gave us a boost to have an accepted 501c3 now behind us. And that event was covered by CBS 21. within 2 weeks, everything was shut down due to COVID. Our next event in June 2020 was to receive our check for our History Pops grant. And there we are. Now you'll note that the check was for $300. And in the blue dress next to me is Dr. Lindsay Varner from the Cumberland County Historical Society. She has since moved on to Vermont to be working, but have to acknowledge how helpful she was in getting us moving for the things that we had to do. And that, there we are on the bridge. The banner, Save Our Bridge banner, was paid for with grant money, along with the plaque that we later got for the county register. And once again, we got our news coverage. But also, we got on the cover of the York Daily Record, and that caught the attention of many readers and brought us new members. And finally got our coverage in the Patriot. So on July 2nd, 2020, an amended closure and removal study with 4 options for the bridge was presented to us at a meeting. Now, this meeting was set up specifically for Friends of Sheepford Road Bridge input, which was a really big deal for us. And in attendance was representatives from Lower Allen Township, Fairview, the York and Cumberland County Planning Boards, the engineering company, and York Commissioner Smith and Cumberland County Commissioner Fauci. And the report recommended the permanent closure of the bridge with 4 options. And you can see those options. The first one was to rehabilitate the bridge for pedestrian use, needs a new owner. Second one, basically box the bridge up, put it in a warehouse, needs a new owner. Immediately closing the bridge and demolishing it, or leaving it in place. We called that option rust in place. And none of them were acceptable to our group. So we prepared our own proposal, pointing out what we saw as discrepancies with the information that was presented and our own documented options. And you'll note the name change. It's no longer a closure and removal study, but a closure, removal, and preservation study. In September, we attended what turned out to be a very difficult meeting. All 6 county commissioners, 3 from York and 3 from Cumberland, met up in York. We had hoped to present our proposal, but were unable to. We're limited in how long we could speak. And when we left that meeting, we were sure that all was lost. And I have to say there were quite a few tears shed. However, after that meeting, a few days after, we received a letter from the counties, which essentially gave Friends of Sheepford Road Bridge until October 2022 to find a preservation solution for the bridge. Well, that really threw us for a loop. And once again, our focus had to change. So we had spent 2 years gathering information of why this bridge should be saved. And now we had a whole new challenge. So we began working on a plan for restoration, funding, and ownership. And it was at this time that I joined the board of directors of the West Shore Historical Society. And we merged the Friends of Sheepford Road Bridge as a committee of the West Shore Historical Society. And then on June 2nd, 2021, we held our event commemorating the placement of the Sheepford Road Bridge on the Cumberland County Register of Historic Places. And it was advertised as the Friends of Sheepford Road Bridge Committee of the West Shore Historical Society. And it was quite an event. Very successful. Almost 100 people attended on a Tuesday morning at 11 a.m., including Pennsylvania Treasurer Stacey Garrity, Congressman Scott Perry, Representative Cheryl DeLosier, county commissioners, and members of the media. And I think you can see Dennis Owens' head there. We believe this event changed the course for us. But what should be pointed out is that this event was actually the result of almost 2 years of work that resulted in everyone coming together for that one day in support of the bridge. There's another photo. And we made the cover of the Sentinel. Also announced at that meeting was that I was now the executive director of the West Shore Historical Society. And then another shock. In July, we were notified that the counties were considering applying for PennDOT TASA funding for the bridge. TASA is Transportation Alternative Set-Aside Funding. After much discussion, county commissioners approved submittal of the application, and the West Shore Historical Society agreed to be the new owner of the bridge upon completion of the restoration project. And we were able to provide the historical information and letters of support, including one from Congressman Perry to make a compelling case for funding. We later submitted a letter of support from the Cumberland County delegation of the Pennsylvania House of Representatives, spearheaded by Representative Delosier, and a letter of support from Senator Mike Regan. We expect to be notified very soon if our application was successful. I noticed today that they have announced the regional awards, but we are waiting for statewide award applicants to be announced. And so I want to point out here that the bridge is not yet saved because we have not yet attained that funding. We were awarded the Cumberland County Historical Society 2021 William Fashag Preservation Award. And as David said, we will be part of Historic Harrisburg Association's A Toast to Harrisburg's West Shore on May 22nd. So I'm going to move on to our picture of the bridge. We call this picture Frozen in Time. It is one of the pictures that we used for puzzles to raise funds for our bridge. But I bring it up because I believe that our preservation policies are frozen in time. And I know that I hear that things are changing. There's a better tone moving more towards preservation. But my experience has been that preservation is the last option and not the first option. So it's usually a case of many properties and only so much money, which was the case for the Sheepford Road Bridge. Hopefully we get funded and this bridge is saved, but it's only one. There are many other bridges and sites in danger. So how to accomplish that? Well, to some extent, I'm seeing preservation historical societies are working more together. David Morrison recently hosted an event where the executive directors of several societies got together to meet the new person at the Civil War Museum. I think his name is Jeff. A more formal approach to that, I think, could go a long way. And then also partnerships between municipalities and historical societies. This grant that the York County has submitted for this bridge is really a true case of a partnership because they're submitting the grant, but the society has agreed to be the owner of that bridge after the restoration is complete. So more partnerships like that could go a long way. And why is it important? Because history matters. And I can't stop my presentation without bringing up the Bishop Bridge. Has been closed since July 2021 and is likely to be demolished if a new owner isn't found. This is also a bridge that's eligible to be on the National Register. For more information about our society, the West Shore Historical Society, there is our website, westshorehistoricalsociety.org, and an autumn picture of the bridge. So I am going to attempt to unshare my screen. Uh-oh. Okay. That was the hardest part, the sharing and the unsharing. Thank you.
Thank you both so much. That was a fantastic presentation. I'm going through our Facebook news feed right now, and we're getting a lot of compliments on the great presentation and the information. Not too many questions. I just always like to give people a couple minutes in case they come in late and want to ask a question or two or something pops in their head. So I'll kind of just get started, maybe for Janice. If somebody sees a project in their neighborhood that they think is worth saving, I mean, what is step number one? You went through kind of in your own experience how you gathered people around and started doing petitions and letters of support, but I mean, it just seems so overwhelming to start. So what's the first step? Is it just putting something on Facebook, seeing who else has an interest? How do you start something like that?
I think the first step is really educating yourself so that you can then share the information. You know, finding out what actually is this property actually historical? You might think it is, but is it actually? And then going the next steps. And part of that is research online, going through records. The best place, the best resource I got was when I got my hands on the PennDOT preservation report. So that told me so much about it. So I think the first step is actually educating yourself on what you're going to be sharing with everybody else.
Okay, perfect. Good advice. Maybe for Veronica, just for my own interest, I'm kind of curious, how do you get into the line of work? I mean, was there a spark that happened in college where you were just like, this is just a fascinating, and you kind of fell into bridge work, or how did you make that connection and get into that?
Yeah, so my bachelor's is in public history, which is actually 4 disciplines. It's museums, archives, historic preservation, and then public interpretation. And we had to do an internship, and I kind of just threw darts at the map of America and picked Pennsylvania, moved here for a summer, worked with Kara Russell and the SHPO, State Historic Preservation Office, and I loved preservation so much. They had a really robust historic bridge program compared to the rest of the country. So I went to grad school with the idea that I wanted to go into preservation at the government level. So everything I did was to get me back to the state and back to the Commonwealth, specifically PennDOT, to then, it was very full circle, but mainly because I had a good bachelor program that forced me to try all the different disciplines. So I very quickly found what ones I liked and what ones I didn't. So then preservation was the best one.
All right.
Yeah.
David, Dr. King, if you guys don't have any other questions or comments, I think we can wrap up the presentation. You guys did a great job. We learned a lot of information, and we had quite a few viewers on Facebook and in person. So great job.
Thank you to both the presenters. This was just awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, and thank you, Ashley, for taking us through all of this.
Yeah, thanks everyone for participating. If anybody has anything else, feel free. Otherwise, I think that concludes our program for this evening. Thanks so much to everybody that was involved. Appreciate it.
All right.
Yes, thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye. See you next month.